Alright guys, in today's video we're going to be taking some time here to go over another massive PlayStation 5 leak, and I know how a lot of you feel about this. You feel like we should just wait and that this is just a waste of time, but you have to understand from my perspective, anytime I make videos going over these leaks, there seems to be a ton of interest in them, and maybe that's because people, I think, are just interested in hearing these leaks, but most people, I'd say the majority of people, understand that's exactly what they are. They are rumors, they are leaks, and we simply cannot buy into them 100%. In fact, it's safe to say that the majority of them are not real, but I think what people get from it is we go over this information and people kind of pick and choose, or they think about all the information they get and they think, how plausible is that? Because even if this is somebody just making this up, I have to say specifically with this leak we're going to go over, it is extremely detailed and well thought out to the point where even if it's completely made up, man, this individual put a lot of thought into this, and it really does make me think if we even see half of these things announced during the PlayStation 5 reveal event or even over the course of 2020 in regards to the PlayStation 5, it's going to be a very, very exciting year for PlayStation fans. And so if you think you're going to enjoy the video, be sure to hit the like button. It really helps the videos out. It's the easiest way for you guys to let me know you do enjoy the content, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I also want to take a moment here to just acknowledge that the last video I did covering a leak, I pointed out a correlation that kind of maybe made the leak stand out above the rest. That being, apparently the individual claimed that Sony is going to use the slogan, "It's time to play," and I thought, or I was under the impression anyway, that Sony just recently updated their Twitter account to use this slogan in their description, but many of you pointed out to me that that is in fact not the case. Sony did already use this slogan to a certain extent in some of their marketing material back in, I believe, 2019. So I just wanted to point that out and let you guys know that it kind of does deflate that leak significantly. When it comes to this leak, there is a lot of information to go over. There is a lot of detail, and the amount of detail in this leak tells me one of two things. Somebody put way too much energy and way too much thought into this, or this person pretty much is on the inside and knows everything that Sony is planning on doing, and that alone makes it, I'd say, a little bit less believable, but still, it's very interesting, so let's dive into it. I apologize it took so long to get to this point, but it says the future of PlayStation and PS5 leak/information, and it's from a user on Reddit called u/humble PlayStation Experience, and it starts with saying the PlayStation 5 is launching October 30th for $500. The price point is set, but many variables, including the SSD size, are liable to change over the next couple of months. They are trying to push for a 2 terabyte. Launch games planned currently include a new Killzone title from Guerrilla Games. This title has been very much under wraps for years. It seems to be a huge departure/reboot from the rest of the franchise, also extra focus on multiplayer. Demon's Souls remake from Bluepoint Games. It's a full remake of the game. Despite having Miyazaki's blessing, the game is sure to be a source of debate for fans since Bluepoint are taking artistic liberties and adding their own ideas. So what's interesting about this, I have to say, is that what makes this so believable to me is, first of all, we talked in the past about how the official PlayStation magazine kind of hinted at the idea of a Killzone online game, and a lot of people were quick to point out that, did you guys just straight up reveal that this is going to be one of the launch titles? Because they had people vote on what they would be most excited for, and Killzone Online was one of the options. And so we understand that PlayStation magazine certainly has some significant connections to Sony and most likely know things that other people do not. So people were quick to point that out. Talking about the Demon's Souls remake here, what's also interesting about this, and what makes me believe that this could in fact be the case, is Bluepoint Games have put a lot of emphasis on just how big of a deal and big of an undertaking this is that they're doing with their next remake, and they really did kind of make it sound like they are going to be taking it a step further than what they did with Shadow of the Colossus, where when it talks about them actually taking artistic liberties, I could certainly see that happening. And whether or not that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. But there's a lot of things here that do make me think, okay, this is interesting. Now, get this next one. A SOCOM reboot from San Diego studio, long rumored to be in development at Guerrilla. The game is being developed by ex-Zipper Interactive employees and burnt-out MLB devs using the Decima engine. It has almost photorealistic graphics. Now, that one is incredibly interesting because just recently we saw that there was a job listing for an individual that is familiar with shipping a first-person shooter game. Now, I'm not saying that SOCOM would necessarily be first person, but this is kind of something we've been hearing about, and it's just incredibly interesting to imagine a SOCOM reboot being announced by San Diego Studio. It's weird because a lot of people were assuming that San Diego Studio is working on some type of Uncharted reboot or continuation or a big third-person action-adventure game, so maybe this is where this does kind of fall apart, where that doesn't really line up with what people have been hearing. And also, I have to say that there's something here that doesn't make too much sense to me. Well, first of all, we have to understand when people say launch titles or launch lineup, that does not mean all of these games are going to be launching day and date with the PlayStation 5. That usually means within the first 6 to 12 months of the PlayStation 5 being out on the market. That's something that I think a lot of people were very confused about when we went over the last leak talking about launch lineup exclusives. So if all of this does happen to be true, it absolutely does not mean all of these games are launching day and date with the PlayStation 5 just within the first 6 to 12 months, most likely. I just wanted to point that out. But this is where it's a little bit confusing to me to imagine a Killzone reboot and a SOCOM reboot both launching within the same year of one another. It is possible. Stranger things have happened, but that's the first sign to me that makes it seem like, I don't know about this one, but it does sound pretty cool. Moving on, it says Gran Turismo 7 from Polyphony Digital. Huge project that has been in development since 2014. The game is designed to be supported for 10 years and has more employees working on it than any other game Sony has ever made. So that's an interesting one. A new Ratchet & Clank from Insomniac Games, start of a new trilogy and sequel to the Future series. The game has been in development since before the 2016 remake was released. This game sees the return of space exploration, hover boots, and competitive multiplayer, which could be free to play, still being decided. So that's an interesting one. Another one that makes me think it is, I think, definitely very plausible. I think most of us are assuming that the first thing we're going to hear or see from Insomniac Games will be something regarding the Spider-Man sequel for PS5, but I am also of the mindset that there's definitely a second team for sure working on something else, most likely Ratchet & Clank, because Sony has expressed their interest in continuing that franchise, going into the future. So this is something that I could actually see and talk about a free-to-play multiplayer. Believe it or not, that is actually something I could see Sony embracing as well going into next gen. But moving on here, it says new multiplayer title, Project Vanguard from Remedy Entertainment. Sony is planning to acquire Remedy based on the reception to this game and a few other variables. In terms of this game, think of a cross between Control, Star Trek, and the film Gravity. So that's an interesting one. They're bringing up Remedy here, and I have been saying for quite some time it wouldn't surprise me if we find out that eventually Sony acquires Remedy. There are people pointing out to me that MBG, that's not going to happen because they're currently working with Microsoft to make the multiplayer or campaign component, I forget which one, I think it's the campaign component, to Crossfire X for Xbox. That doesn't mean that Sony wouldn't be able to acquire them. You've seen many times with Microsoft, they acquire studios that are currently in the middle of developing something and they still have to release their projects on competing platforms. We could see the same exact thing happen here if Sony does actually plan to acquire Remedy. It says here, Wild from Wild Sheep Studio. Back in 2017, the game was a mess and lacked direction, with Michael Ansel, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, devoting more time to Beyond Good and Evil 2. He is still on board, just in a lesser capacity. The game has switched to Decima Engine and will be on PS4 and PS5, so that's an interesting one. New action title from London studio, actually inspired by Hellblade. This game is a short but hopefully satisfying open-world Guy Ritchie-like adventure. So that would be interesting. I would like to see London Studio do something a little bit more than what they have been doing. That's not a knock on anything they've been doing. It's just I would like to see more of Sony Studios kind of, just try to create more AAA-like games, I guess we could say. New action title from Japan Studio from the makers of Forbidden Siren. This game is more of a spiritual successor to Gravity Rush 2. All titles are liable to be delayed out of fall 2020, which, yes, this is a lot of games, so I would assume if there's any truth to any of this, you certainly will not see all of these games coming in 2020. Sony will host an event on February 5th. Now, this is the second leak we're seeing claiming the event is going to be on February 5th. We have to point that out. To unveil the system, controller, and key aspects of their plan with another event close to E3 2020 in timing, then one last event shortly before release. There will also be 2 or 3 stated plays throughout the year to keep fans excited and remind gamers of other big PlayStation releases. Other non-launch titles due to be unveiled at these events include New Horizon title from Guerrilla Games, which apparently is, they put some dates here, 2021. New Uncharted title from New Unnamed Studio. See, this is where I'm a little bit confused because we've been hearing that San Diego studio, they're the one, their second team or whatever, are the ones that are working on this new Uncharted-like title, but maybe it could be a completely new studio. That's something that we can't completely discount, but according to this leak, new Uncharted title from a New Unnamed Studio, 2021. A new Order title from Ready at Dawn Studios, 2021. We just went over how apparently if there is another leak from a somewhat credible, I guess, insider, if we want to call them that, a credible leaker, I guess is the best way to put it. It seems that a new Order game is actually in development, which is really awesome. So it goes on here, a new MotorStorm title from Codemasters, a new Spider-Man title from Insomniac Games, which is slated for 2022. Now, this is another area where I don't know how much I believe this, because the rumors we've been hearing so far from people who claim to actually, know what's going on with Insomniac and Spider-Man 2 is apparently Sony is trying to strive for a holiday 2021 release for the next Spider-Man game. But again, this is all inside discussion, rumors, leaks. Nobody knows what is real and what's not. A new God of War title from Santa Monica Studio, 2022. A new Fumito Yuta title from Gen Design, 2022. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that individual's name correctly. And it also goes on to say here that all titles are liable to not be unveiled, plans change, or worse. Key features of PlayStation 5 include the ability to have 3 games and multiple media functionalities suspended while you play a 4th game, the ability to have different states of the same game running at the same time. In the cloud, you can have as many games suspended as you like. You can use the cloud to resume a game on your console after months of playing other games exactly where you left off, or of course any other platform through the cloud. Save data, screenshots, and video clips can be offloaded to the cloud to free up hard drive space. Rigorous amounts of data and statistics for you to view about your games and platform use, which would be awesome. I think many people have been waiting for that. Backwards compatibility for all PlayStation formats. More on backwards compatibility. Expect PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4 games available to purchase and play on PS5 at launch. The full PS4 catalog will be available, but libraries will be limited for other platforms to begin with. More games will be added as time goes on in much of the same way Microsoft did. You will actually see a lot more old games supporting higher frame rates, 4K resolution, and HDR, even ray tracing on PS5 than has been possible on the Xbox One. Sony are very much concerned about saving old games from older platforms. They have the first Gran Turismo game running on PlayStation 5 at 120 FPS with ray tracing enabled. It looks surprisingly great for a 22-year-old game. Backwards compatibility for PSP and Vita are also in development, with Sony aiming to have both available within 2 years of the system launching. So, again, guys, very, very detailed. It does certainly sound like wishful thinking. I'm not going to lie to you. Again, I'm going to emphasize halfway through this leak, because it's a massive one, take everything with a massive pinch of salt. But, man, how amazing would that be? It says some other tidbits. 1. Sony and Microsoft are currently both in a business war with one another to secure marketing rights to certain third-party titles that are going to be considered major draws to the next generation. Interestingly enough, Microsoft has already gotten the marketing for Rocksteady's new title, but the WB Games Montreal title, heavily rumored to be called Batman Arkham Legacy, not sure about the name, is up for the taking and is said to be an exceedingly and surprisingly impressive game. Right now, the developers are having issues porting the game to current generation hardware. Also in contention are two different projects from EA Motive, a fourth Mafia game from 2K, an exciting new IP from Sega and Creative Assembly, and Ubisoft's Avatar. 2. Rumors about either Sony or Microsoft undercutting each other on price is wrong. Both cost very similarly to produce, are almost indistinguishable in terms of specs, and can't afford to launch at any less than $500. The main difference between both systems is the SSD technology, which Sony has the slight edge on, but the differences and long-term outcomes cannot be predicted. 3. Xbox Lockhart is in development but isn't going to make it out in time for the Xbox Series launch, and specs are still being decided. 4. There is some truth to rumors that Sony is looking to acquire ZeniMax Media, with Herman Hulst leading the charge. However, this has actually happened before, and if there is no news before the end of March, don't expect it to happen. 5. Lastly, speaking of Herman Hulst, there is a considerable amount of renewed excitement within Sony and worldwide studios with the restructuring and appointment of Hulst. Everything is more organized, with communication and worker satisfaction being at an all-time high. So, that is the entirety of the leak, and I know that was a lot, and I will tell you this right off the bat. If you are somebody who's like, I don't believe any of that, I don't blame you. It is a random leak from Reddit, but here's the thing. Going over all of this information, it really does make you think how much of this stuff, because again, even if this is somebody just making it up, they sure did put a lot of thought into it, and they were very detailed about it. And a lot of it does seem like stuff we've already kind of heard about, but there were some interesting tidbits in there. It makes you think, how much of this stuff can we actually expect from the PlayStation 5 reveal? Well, the truth is, I don't know. I think that even half this stuff, especially the part about backwards compatibility, that would be awesome. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's probably best going into the PlayStation 5 reveal with definitely much lower expectations than what we are reading here, because first of all, there's no way of telling if any of this is legitimate, and you don't want to go into the PlayStation 5 reveal or anything related to the PlayStation 5 this year with your expectations way too high. But again, if even half of this stuff ends up being true, it's going to be awesome. And I think it's safe to say that, you know, a lot of this stuff that we're seeing or hearing with this leak will turn out to be true, but there's a lot of stuff here that's like, really makes you wonder if this individual, you would have to imagine if they're leaking all of this stuff. I mean, honestly, with the amount of detail that's in this leak, they literally have to be like a higher up over there at Sony that's just taking time to, for some reason, come out here on Reddit and be like, I'm going to describe every single thing that Sony plans to do over the next year and a half to 2 to 3 years with the PlayStation 5, because why not? So that is kind of what makes this not seem real. But again, it's very interesting, and it kind of gets your mind racing and thinking about, Now, apparently, and this is where I'm going to end the video, it turned out to be longer than I wanted it to, but thank you to anybody who has stayed this entire time. Apparently, Sony is getting ready to, I assume it's Sony, getting ready to have some announcements related to PlayStation that they're going to be dropping sometime next week or this week, I guess, and so I'm going to be paying attention to that. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts about this leak down in the comments below. What parts of this leak kind of stood out to you? What parts stand out that make you immediately think there's no way this is real? Or what parts stand out to you that make you think this could in fact be the real deal? Leave your thoughts down below. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. Really helps it out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.